How are voters feeling now that Kamala Harris is topping the Democratic ticket? New polling just dropped, and guess who's coming to visit? Yep, CNN senior data reporter Harry Enten joining us now. As you ran the numbers, what are you seeing? What are people feeling?
You know, Steve mentioned this. You know, Harris is, she was the VP, but now she's at the top of the ticket, and I think opinions of her are moving rather fast. So this is the net favorability ratings. This is from an ABC News Ipsos poll that literally dropped just within the last 24 hours. I'm going to be interested if other polls follow. So this is net favorability. It's favorable minus unfavorable. Look at this. A week ago, she was at minus 11 points. Look at this. She's jumped all the way up to plus 1 point. Trump has actually dropped a little bit from minus 11 to minus 16, but that movement isn't so wide compared to this 12-point movement. And I think the real question is, will this stick in other polling? Because Democrats absolutely love this, and it gets back to Steve's point that opinions on Harris, I think, are much more malleable than they were for Joe Biden, where you just had that consistently negative rating. Here, this is the first time I've seen a politician running for national office with a net positive rating. I don't know since when. I mean, it's something unforeseen, at least over the last 4 years.
And that is quite a spread there.
Yes, that is quite. Democrats love this spread.
I'm sure they do. All right, voter enthusiasm among Democrats. Speaking of Democrats, what did that look like and how did that change?
Yeah, you know, opinions are one thing when it comes to the individual candidates, but enthusiasm. We know that Democrats were suffering from low enthusiasm, so enthusiastic about voting. So this is Democrats for Biden or Harris. Look at this. Back in February, just 62% of Democrats said they were enthusiastic about voting for Joe Biden. Look at this now. Woof. Up to 88% now say that they are enthusiastic about voting for Kamala Harris. That is a huge jump. That is a 26-point jump. Look at Trump during the same stretch. Republicans for Trump. It was 80% in February. Look, it's still fairly high at 82%. But compared to February, where Trump had this 18-point advantage, now we see Harris with a 6-point advantage. It's definitely for Democrats. Game on. They are very enthusiastic. We see it in the money being raised. We see it in the volunteer signs. And now we're seeing in the polling as well.
Yeah, and they're hoping that translates to in the line to vote or voting by mail.
That's what they're hoping for. We'll wait and see.
What about the all-important battleground states? Because that's what everyone's looking at. That this is going to be, according to you and many others, a very tight race. Yeah,
so, you know, this is all national polling, but ultimately it comes down to the Electoral College, and this is Harris versus Trump. These are the northern battleground states. This is all polling conducted since Kamala Harris became the presumptive Democratic nominee or the very likely Democratic nominee. Look at this. In the Great Lake battleground states, pure toss-ups, +1 in Wisconsin, well within any margin of error. Michigan tied, Pennsylvania tied. We thought these were going to be tight. At this point, they look like they're going to be tight. Perhaps a little bit more interesting were these GOP reaches, where Donald Trump was competitive with Joe Biden. But look now, Minnesota, +6 Harris. Look at New Hampshire, +7 Harris. Maine, +9 Harris. The GOP reaches where they thought they could play against Joe Biden. At this particular point, it doesn't look like they can play against Kamala Harris. It looks like this election is going to be decided here in the northern battlegrounds. And then, of course, those Sun Belt battlegrounds where you don't have new polling yet, but we'll just have to wait and see. Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina. But it looks like it's going to be much more like the traditional map than it's going to be one of these wide-ranging maps where we're going to have states that put into play that we're not used to. These, at this point, at least, these particular states look like the GOP reaches will continue to be GOP reaches.
This is interesting since the governor of Minnesota is also a potential vice presidential pick, but it looks like she's doing quite well there. So
she's doing quite well. It's going to be interesting. Maybe the Democratic vice president might come out of here. Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro. Maybe you get one little extra point, turns those ties into maybe +1 for the day.
I think Gretchen is out, so it may be Josh.
We'll see. Everyone is out until they're back in.
Correct.
Well, we are now just 99 days away from the presidential election, and look at this eye-popping measure of what Kamala Harris has accomplished in the past 8 days. Her campaign has raised $200 million since her bid for the White House began with President Biden's endorsement. 2 of 3 donors are giving to the campaign for the very first time, and more than 170,000 people have volunteered to work on the campaign. And as Harris considers her own running mate, she and her allies are ramping up attacks on Donald Trump. They will target J.D. Vance for his controversial comments and say he's too experienced to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. Meanwhile, the former president is road testing his own attacks on Harris. Trump is rolling out new insults at his campaign events to find out what riles up his supporters most. He often does that. Let's discuss with CNN senior political analyst Ron Brownstein, Republican strategist Doug Heye, and CNN political commentator Jamal Simmons. He was also communications director for Vice President Harris. So we have an all-star lineup here with this panel. Ron, I'm going to kick it off with you. You have the DNC just 3 weeks away. The big question, can Vice President Harris maintain this incredible momentum by anyone's measure in the run-up to the convention?
Yeah, and look, the biggest change in the race from a week ago, before President Biden, announced he wasn't going to run again, is the unleashing of Democratic enthusiasm. I mean, there is enormous energy in the Democratic Party for years now about preventing Trump from imposing his vision on America. But that was largely suppressed by the disillusionment and the depression, really, about from Democrats about their prospects and Biden. The political strategist, Mike Podhorzer, using data from the Democratic firm Catalyst, has calculated that there are 93 million separate people, individuals, who have come out to vote against Trump or Trumpism in 2018, 2020, and 2022. And what Harris has done above all, she still has lots of challenges in the Electoral College and getting to 270, but what she's done is, I think, re-energized what that coalition, what Democrats call the anti-MAGA coalition, and it has put her and the party back in the game.
It's interesting, Jamal, on that note from Ron, and actually for our viewers, you should know that Jamal served as the communications director for the vice president, but her campaign seems to be really shifting away from focusing solely on Donald Trump's threat to democracy and towards this sentiment that he's just weird. What do you think about this shift in strategy?
Yeah, listen, I think people know that Donald Trump, they've been hearing for a year from President Biden, year and a half, about him being a threat to democracy. Frankly, they've been hearing about it since January 6th. So some of that's built in and people know it. But now we're getting to a different place where Democrats aren't talking about it in big, lofty terms, talking about it in very straightforward words like, it's just weird. It's odd. These people don't think people who haven't had kids ought to participate in the government, or maybe people who do have kids should get extra votes, or maybe, whatever other MAGA Project 2025 oddity that the Trump people want to go along with. They're hearing about it, and I think most people in America don't really like it. They don't want to hear about it. So right now, you've got Donald Trump about to be investigated. Well, not investigated, about to be talked to by the FBI because he's been a victim in a crime. And what is amazing is how little that seems to have impacted the electoral kind of math here. And really now we're at a place where the Democrats are surging and maybe that have a good prospective future.
And Trump, for his part, is responding to Harris's momentum by saying she, quote, seized a hoard of over $2 million from dirty liberal cash. He's framing her candidacy as essentially fraudulent and illegitimate. Doug, what do you think about that? And also, I want to get your response to the weird strategy.
Yeah, well, clearly they were planning and hoping to run against Joe Biden. That was their whole campaign strategy.
And they made that pretty obvious.
Absolutely. Donald Trump is a ball of energy, whether you like him or not. And Joe Biden looks really sleepy. But he's now sort of in the past tense. And they're dealing with a ball of energy right now that is Kamala world. Democrats think that they're in the land of hope and dreams at this point, though it's still very, very early. And this is where they have to shift. And the good news for Republicans, for the RNC, is they have two sets of records for Kamala Harris that they can use. And it's what we call the book. The research department at the RNC compiles these over months and years. You have Kamala Harris's record as vice president, which is everything that American voters are upset about with the direction of the country right now. The Biden-Harris administration. That's costs and inflation. That's the situation at the border where she was the border czar, or some people say, well, actually she wasn't. That says it's a problem. Then you have the set of what her record is as a senator in California and also her work in San Francisco. There's a lot of material there. Republicans, don't panic. Just pivot to what you should be doing anyways in any normal campaign.